Shabbat Shalom. Welcome to Beginning Hebrew. We are on week number 7. And as usual, you can find the notes for this class and all past classes at theregathering.com/page/PFT Hebrew 1. You do have to have an account on The Regathering to access those, but the account is free, and there's lots of other great things on The Regathering too. And if you want to see recordings of past classes, they are on YouTube at the Passion For Truth video channel. Just look for Hebrew class on there, and you'll be able to find these. There's also lots of other great stuff on that channel, so I encourage you to check that out as well. All right, well, we are on our last 2 letters today. So I'll just go through them real quick, what we've covered to this point. We've gone through 20 so far. Aleph, Beit, Gimel, Dalet, He, Vav, Zayin, Chet, Tet, Yod, Kaf, Lamed, Mem, Nun, Samech, Ayin, Pei, Tzadi, Kuf, and Resh. So we are on to our last 2. All right, our 21st letter is the letter Shin. And Shin is actually 2 different letters combined into one. Shin will have a dot above it, and if the dot is above it and to the right, it is a Shin. And it is pronounced as we would pronounce our English SH, sh. And if the dot is to the left, then it is a sin, and it is pronounced as an S, just like the samech. Sometimes you'll hear the Hebrew alphabet recited, and at the end they won't just say Shin Tav, they'll say Shin and Sin and Tav. They'll separate the 2 of them. It's like 2 letters combined into one. So the dot on the right pronounced as SH, the dot on the left pronounced as an S. Numerical value of Shin is 300. And in Paleo-Hebrew, Shin looked something like this. The Hebrew word shein means a tooth. And so that is the image represented here is that of a tooth, although the modern one actually looks a little bit more like a tooth than the ancient one does. I suppose it could be not necessarily a human tooth, though. It could be a dog's tooth or something like that. You'll hear people associate Shin with fire sometimes, which doesn't seem to have any relation to a tooth. There is something of a relation, though, because Shin is a part of a number of words that involve fire. And I think the idea is that it's something that consumes. So a tooth consumes, fire consumes, and the Shin consumes. If you turn the Shin on its side, you wind up with a Greek sigma. And in the lowercase, the sigma actually has 2 forms, in the middle of a word and at the end of a word. Sigma became the Latin S. And one thing to watch out for with the Shin, not so much to watch out for, just to be aware of, is this dot can be confused with a cholam vowel, because the cholam vowel is simply a dot above and to the left of a letter. So there will be situations where you'll find a word with a Shin in it, and then the vowel immediately following the Shin is a cholam. And so that can be a little perplexing at first. It's fairly easy when the cholam comes before the sheen because you just see two dots in a row, so you know O and then the dot that goes with the sheen. But when you see it like this, sometimes it'll make you pause for a second and wonder if is that a sheen or is that a seen. So that will happen from time to time. It's not terribly often, but it does throw everybody for a loop the first time they see it. It throws me for a loop sometimes when I see it even now. So, but yes, this dot is not a vowel. It's just indicating sheen or seen, and so sometimes you have to differentiate it from the cholam in the same word. Okay. So that is the sheen. And our final letter is the tav. And in Sephardic Hebrew, the tav always makes the sound of the letter T. Numerical value is 400. And it's worth noting that there's quite a bit of variety between the dialects in how the tav is pronounced. As I say in Sephardic, which is what we're learning, it's always pronounced as a T. However, in the Ashkenazic dialect, the tav is pronounced as a T when it has a dagesh and as an S when it does not. And so this leads to a number of words being pronounced a little bit differently in Ashkenazic, and you'll hear them from Orthodox Jews from time to time. So they will say Torah because there's a dagesh in the tav in Torah, but instead of saying Shabbat, they will say Shabbos because the tav at the end of Shabbat does not have a dagesh. Okay, so you'll hear Sephardic Jews say Shabbat, and Jews speaking the Ashkenazic dialect say Shabbos. Okay. And a lot of Orthodox you'll hear say Shabbos. All right, so that's Ashkenazic, and the Yemenite have another way. The Yemenite dialect, again, pronounces it as a T with the dagesh, and without a dagesh, the Yemenite dialect pronounces the tav as we'd pronounce th, as th. And this is why the English transliteration of Shabbat is Sabbath and not Sabbat. Okay? Because a lot of scholars believe the Yemenite dialect to be closer to the more ancient pronunciations, and so that th kind of follows through with the transliteration. But yes, so the way we're learning, it's a T regardless. You don't have to worry about dagesh or no dagesh with the tav. But in the other two major, or the other two dialects that I'm pointing out, you'll find an S sound and a TH sound also associated with the tav. Okay? So they know what they're doing, and we know what we're doing, and everyone knows what we're doing. We just don't speak the same dialects. Okay? And who's to say which one is original or which one is right? But regardless, this is how it is now. So, okay. In Paleo-Hebrew, the tav is written like this, or sometimes you'll see it upright. So it makes a cross or a mark, a sign perhaps with a post and the cross piece that would have a name written on it, or perhaps X marks the spot, something to that effect, or perhaps a cross. The Hebrew word tav means a mark or a sign. And it doesn't take much imagination to change this into the Greek tau or the Latin t. Okay? So that is the tav. And the thing about learning the alphabet in order is that you miss a lot of the fun words until the very end. So I'm going to go over quite a few of those, just so you're familiar with them, although a number of them you're probably already familiar with. Okay, so here's one you'll encounter a lot: an aleph, yod, sheen, with the chiric vowel underneath the aleph. Okay. So chiric followed by a yod makes long E sound, followed by the sh of the sheen. So ish is the pronunciation of this. And ish is a man. Ish would be, if you transliterated it, I would put ISH. ISH. No, A. No, it's ish. Okay, so aleph, sheen, he, the chiric under the aleph and a comets under the sheen. This is pronounced isha, isha, and isha is a woman. And as the verse in Genesis 2 says, she was called Isha because she was taken from Ish. And we have the similar wordplay with man and woman in English, one of those neat things that kind of carried through to our language. But there's a wordplay in the original as well. And a very similar sounding word to both of those is just aleph sheen with a tsera under the aleph. So this is pronounced aish. Okay, so ish is man, isha is woman, and aish is fire. Yeah, or AYSH, or however, whatever makes you think of that pronunciation is basically right. But yes, aish is fire. Okay. All right, some other sheen words. Sheen followed by final mem with a tsera under the sheen is pronounced shame, and shame is a name. It's also the name of one of Noah's sons, or Noach's sons. Shem, Shem, Ham, and Yafet. Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Well, that depends who you ask. But in the dialect we're learning, yes, it is Shem. You will hear Shem quite a bit, and actually sometimes sometimes this vowel will change depending on the words or surrounding it. So, sometimes it'll be pronounced one way and sometimes it'll be pronounced another. But the key is the spelling. Hello, hello. Okay. Another highly significant word, sheen, bait, tav, with a patach under the sheen, and a comets under the bait, and this bait does have a dagish. So this is pronounced Shabbat, and is, of course, the Sabbath, day of rest. And you're probably noticing a theme here. I haven't written down any seen words, but rather all sheen words. Sheen is quite a bit more prevalent than the seen. But the seen is part of a number of very significant words, which I'll cover in a moment. This last sheen one, sheen, lamed, vav, final mem, with a comments under the sheen. The vav is a cholam vowel. Okay, so we've got sh of the sheen, the a of the comments, the l of the lamed, o of the cholam, and the m of the final mem. All together is shalom. Shalom. And the most common translation of shalom is peace. It can also mean wholeness, health, completion, or restoration. Shalom is a state where everything is right. It's the best way I can describe it. Yes, we're all looking forward to a long, long period of shalom. Yeah, 1,000 years and more. 1,000 years and beyond. So, okay, so I do want to cover a few seen words, just so you don't think it doesn't exist. My favorite seen word is seen, mem, chet, and hey, with a chirik under the seen, a shva under the mem, and a comments under the chet. Okay, so chirik makes the short I sound, the shva makes no sound, and then we've got the a of the comments. So first syllable sim, second syllable cha. Okay, so simcha. Simcha is joy. So a variant of simcha, sameach, you'll find in the phrase chag sameach, which means happy festival. You'll hear this a lot around Sukkot or Pesach. Okay, chag sameach, or even Chanukah. Of course, you can say any number of other things, Yom Sameach, joyful day, or Chag seems to be the most appropriate because it's a time you're commanded to rejoice. So, okay, so Simcha. It's also part of Israel, which is spelled Yod with a chirik, Sin, Shva, so there's our Yis, Resh with a comments, Aleph with a Tzera, and finally a Lamed. So Yis, Ra, and El. Yisrael is Israel. Okay. And then finally with the scene, scene with a comments followed by a resh, it's pronounced Sar. Sar is a prince, So the phrase Prince of Peace is Sar Shalom. Okay, which is found in Isaiah chapter 9, I believe. Okay. And if we add a hey to the end of Sar, making it Sarah, that is a princess. Okay, which is the name of Abraham's wife Sarah. Originally it was Sarai. Okay, Sarai meant my princess, but it was changed to Sarah. So she wasn't just Abraham's princess, she was a princess when her name was changed. Okay, so yes, Sar is prince and Sarah is princess. Okay. So, quite a few sheen and seen words. I don't want to overload you, but I do want you to be familiar with all of those because you'll encounter them again and again and again. So, all right. And Shabbat had a tav. I'll give you a few more tav words. Okay, this is a tav with a dagesh, so it's pronounced the same regardless of which dialect. Followed by a vav with a cholam, a resh, and a hey. Comments under the resh. Okay. So, Torah is how this is pronounced. And Torah is law, or more accurately, because there are a number of Hebrew words that mean law, and you'll notice this in different translations. The King James is quite diligent about pointing out all the different words that can be translated as law. So you'll see statutes, judgments, my charges, my precepts. You'll see all these different words. And there are actually a number of different Hebrew words that are all translated something, equivalent to law. But they all do mean slightly different things. And in the case of Torah, Torah means law in the sense of a code, in the sense of that it's not just one commandment, but it's like a chunk. It's like a body of laws. So you'll see the phrase like the Torah of Moses is a good example. Okay, there are other codes of law, but the Torah of Moses is what Moses wrote down. You'll also see within the Torah of Moses, you'll see different sections that are referred to as the Torah of this or the Torah of that. So Torah Tzara'at is the Torah of lepers or the law of lepers. And so those couple chapters in Leviticus that deal with leprosy in a person or in a garment or in a house, that's all kind of falls under this heading, and it calls itself that. It calls itself the Torah of lepers. So it's saying that this is a chunk of laws that apply to situation X, Y, or Z. So Torah itself kind of, in a technical legal sense, it would refer to, the body of laws. It'd be like traffic law, okay? It's no different than any other law per se, but it's all kind of lumped together because it all has the same topic. So anyway, just a little aside on technically what Torah means. The root of it, of course, comes from a word that means to shoot. So the idea with Torah is to hit the mark. It's to hit the mark. And the word chata, which means to sin, means to miss the mark. So there's a lot of visual imagery attached to these concepts. And I wanted to mention this one too. Ach is a brother, which I mentioned all the way back at Chet. Okay, but ach is brother. And I never mentioned the word for sister, but that's because it has a tav in it. Sister is aleph chet, vav with a cholam, and tav. Pronounced achot. Okay, so ach, brother, achot is sister. A-C-H-O-T. Okay, and final tav word is tav. Go ahead and add the vowels in. Patach, lamed with a shva. So tau, so far. Mem with a chirik, followed by a yod. And finally, a dalet. So we've got the T of the tav, the A of the patach, the L of the lamed, first syllable, tal. Okay, then the M of the mem. Chirik yod makes a long E, which I would write just as an I, but you could write two E's if you wanted to. And then the D of the dalet. So altogether, it's pronounced talmid, talmid. And talmid is related, yes, it's related to the word Talmud, but what a talmid is a student. You could also call a talmid a disciple. But disciple is a little more a more serious concept than a student, to be sure. Okay. Literally, it means a learner, someone who learns. So the Talmud, or the Talmud, it's the extensive body of Jewish oral law. And so literally what it is the learnings, the studies of the rabbis. Okay. So yes, Talmud is related to Talmud. Okay. So if you were a Talmud of Judaism, you would learn the Talmud. Just like if you were a student of English, you would follow an English study guide. Okay. But this is what all of you are who are learning Hebrew, is Talmidim, or Talmidot, of Hebrew language. Oh yes, in the Hebrew language. That's a good word to know. And that involves a tav, which is why I haven't gone over it just yet. So that will actually be my final tav word. So ayin with a chirik, beit with no dagish, and a shva underneath. Resh with a chirik, followed by a yod, and a tav on the end. Okay. So this is pronounced ivrit, ivrit, or just ivrit if you don't want to swallow your tongue at the beginning. Ivrit is the Hebrew language. So if you are learning the Hebrew language, you are a Talmid Ivrit, a student of Hebrew. Any questions about sin, shin, tav, or any of these words? Okay. Next week we'll be reviewing a bunch of words and kind of getting the hang of pronunciation and just getting more familiar with the words we've already learned. So, okay, and there are a couple of vowels, or actually just one vowel that I haven't covered so far. I do have in your notes the shva vowel, which I neglected to cover before, the chataf vowels. I went over that last week, but the shva, I'll just mention it again. One dot on top of the other, placed beneath the letter. Okay. For our purposes right now, it makes no sound. It's just a placeholder indicating that there's no other vowel right there. Okay, so that's the shva. And the vowel that I haven't covered, which is the most rare vowel. You won't see it very often, but you will see it. Okay, 3 dots at a diagonal here, placed beneath the letter. Shva, no sound. Okay, this is called a kibbutz. Name of this vowel is a kibbutz, and it makes the sound of short U, as in put, or book, okay, that sound. As I say, this is the most rare vowel. You won't see this one very often, but you will see it. Okay. You'll see its name spelled with a K sometimes too. But regardless, it makes this short U sound. Okay? And the other thing I want to talk about is a special case of the vowel patach. Okay, so the patach appears below the letter whose pronunciation it follows. It makes the short A sound ah, as in father. Now, the normal order of pronunciation for any vowel pointing is that you pronounce the consonant and then the vowel that's attached to the consonant. Okay? There is a special case with the patach where you'll actually pronounce it before the consonant that it is attached to. Okay? But it only occurs in a very specific situation. Okay? So there's 2 parts to that situation. Number 1, if a patach is found below a chet or an ayin. Okay, so these are the only 2 letters that this can happen with, is a chet or an ayin. And that chet or ayin is the last letter in a word, then the patach will be pronounced before that chet or ayin. So what does this look like? Suppose we had a word, that was spelled lamed. Okay, a vav with a shuruk. So far this would be pronounced lu, L of the lamed and the u of the shuruk. Okay, and then we had a chet at the end, and a patach under the chet. Okay. Now normally you would think this would be pronounced lu cha, because we would pronounce the chet before the vowel that's attached to it. But in this happens to meet this very specific set of criteria. We've got a chet with a patach, and it's the last letter in the word. Okay, if it's the first letter or the middle letter in a word, pronounced just like normal. It's only if it's the very last letter. So in this case, this is not pronounced lucha, but instead luach. Okay, luach just so happens to be a word that means a tablet or a table. The word you'll see most often that exhibits this property is resh, vav with a shuruk vowel, so ru so far, and then a chet with a patach underneath it. So this is not pronounced rucha, but instead pronounced ruach. Okay, and ruach is spirit or wind. Okay? So ruach is your word to remember this rule by, because you'll always see it spelled this way, and the patach will indeed be underneath the chet. So before you think everybody's pronouncing it wrong and they should be calling it, the rucha hakodesh, it is in fact the ruach because of this particular rule, and it applies to more words than ruach, but that's your best bet for remembering it. Okay. Not as significant when it's involving an ayin, because the ayin is barely pronounced as it is, but technically that is the case. So if this were an ayin, it would not be pronounced, ru'ga, but ru'ang. Okay, would be pronounced before whatever sound you attribute to the ayin. Okay, so that is the special case where a vowel is pronounced before the consonant is attached to. It only happens with a patach attached to either a chet or an ayin, and only when they're at the very end of a word. Doesn't happen much, but it does happen. And again, ruach, the most common word you're going to find that exhibits this. Another word, I'll just give you one more example. This is a mem, shin, yod, chet. Okay, with a patach under the mem, a chirik under the shin, and then a patach under the chet. So we've got ma, shi. Instead of ma shi cha, this is ma shiach, which is the anointed one, or an anointed one. Okay? So that is the special case of the patach. Mashiach, of course, is where our English word Messiah comes from. That is what it means, is the anointed one. there any questions about that? It's one of those weird little exceptions, but it is at least consistent. Okay. Any questions about anything else? Okay. All right. Well, to give an idea of what's coming in the future then, next week we'll be covering a lot of pronunciation, so get you acquainted with, just get you used to pronouncing a Hebrew word. You know, if you've got the letters and you've got the vowels, you know, what order, how are things pronounced, get into a few more multi-syllable words so they don't trip you up so bad. So far I've introduced a lot of one-syllable words because they're very easy to see and to remember. But anyway, I want to get you more acquainted with that so you're not tripping over it once we get into the intermediate stuff. We have covered the entire alphabet and all the vowel sounds, so congratulations. So next step is to start building vocabulary and start applying it, you know, in phrases and eventually sentences. So next week we'll get more acquainted with the, just remembering our vocabulary, pronouncing things, and after that, my idea is that we'll just jump into intermediate at this time slot at 2 o'clock, and then the 3 o'clock class will jump into the next level, which I'll just call level 3 because there's going to be a level beyond that too. So, and I can't think of anything beyond advanced except for super advanced, and the name of the classes are going to start getting really ridiculous if I keep up at that pace. So, so that is my plan. And all right, well, that's it. Well, thank you for being here. We'll see you next week. Shalom.